Okay, if you guys will get out your notes, we are going to go over this. Let me move myself around here a little bit. Diffusion and osmosis. We are actually, I guess, Wednesday for you guys. We're going to start a lab that's going to take like 2 days of class time. A really fun lab, probably one of my favorite ones for all year. I feel like I've said that in the last few labs, but this one really is one of my favorites. And something that I think that you'll remember and you'll be able to use whenever you guys get to anatomy in college, and you'll need to know this. You'll hopefully will have something to go back to and remember. So anyways, let's look at this. So it says diffusion, which we've already talked about this. The process, it says, by which molecules spread from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration. So remember that things move from or with their concentration down the concentration gradient. So they move from an area of high concentration to low concentration. Now it says when the molecules are even throughout a space, and it's called equilibrium. That means that you have the same amount of solutes or solution or whatever is passing on either side of the membrane. So remember, what we're talking about is fluid inside the cell and fluid outside the cell. Now keep in mind, your blood, for example, is more than just your red blood cells. You have your red blood cells, but you also have like the plasma that's in your blood. The same thing in the tissues. Like you have your blood cells that are within your blood vessels, but then there's also fluids that are like in your muscles and fatty tissue, epithelial tissue, everywhere else too. So that's when we're talking about things moving in and out of the cell, is because there should be fluid and solutes in the cell, but those should also be outside the cell as well. And so that's why things have to be able to move in and out. So, for example, if we're talking about water, okay, our cells, water is going to move back and forth into and out of the cell until water is equal on both sides. Okay, so that's diffusion, though. Remember, diffusion is passive, and I say passive, I guess you can have, no, I think diffusion is always passive. It just moves from an area of high concentration to low concentration. Okay, so look, concentration gradients, that's the difference between concentrations in a space. So that's just the difference between the two. It says molecules will always move down their concentration gradient toward areas of lesser concentration, like it talks about with the food coloring, kind of like it did when I talked about in the lecture the other day. It says, or air freshener sprayed in a room. You spray the air freshener, it goes from being really concentrated, eventually it'll end up, it just kind of dissipates into the whole room because it's moving to areas with less and less and less of that air freshener. We've talked about selectively permeable. It says membranes that allow some things through. Our cell membranes are selectively permeable, let certain things in and out, but other things not. But look, water and oxygen move freely across the membrane by diffusion. Okay? Osmosis is specifically the diffusion of water across the membrane. So when you hear the word osmosis, think water. Osmosis, water, osmosis, water. Okay? Because water will move in the direction where there is a high concentration of solute, meaning a low concentration of water. Okay, so get this in your head, okay? So this is the way to think of this. Okay, if I've got 2 cups, okay, let's say I've got 2 cups and I put salt water in both of them. Actually, let's rephrase that. Okay, let's say I've got 2 beakers and I fill one up at halfway with salt and one up with a quarter way of salt, okay? And then I pour water in and I make it both of them equal the same amount. So let's say I fill both of the beakers to the top, okay? Which one is going to have less water? Okay. What's going to be the beaker that has the most salt, right? Because there's not enough room in there for water. So think of it that way. So it says water will move in the direction where there's a high concentration of solute, hence a lower concentration of water. So if you had those 2 beakers, Okay, and let's say you put a membrane between them and let everything move across. Water is going to move from the area where there's more water and less solute to the area where there's more solute, less water, because it's trying to equal those two things out. So wherever there's more solute, it's going to have this ability to pull water with it. So that's why people who eat a lot of salt, okay, a lot of times have swollen ankles. You hear people say that, oh, I ate too much salt, that's why my feet are swollen. Well, that's because when they take in all that extra salt, that's a solute, okay, and that makes us retain water because our body is trying to get that concentration, that water and salt concentration back to normal, so it makes us hold in water to make up for all that extra salt. So it says a simple rule to remember is salt sucks. That's because it pulls in, it pulls fluid. The salt is a solute, and when it's concentrated inside or outside the cell, it draws the water in its direction. It says this is also why you get thirsty after eating something salty, because we eat something salty, that goes into our bloodstream, and then we feel the need to drink more water to increase that, or to decrease that salt concentration. So I hope that kind of explains. That's what we're going to be doing with the eggs this week. Is we're going to once we get rid of that shell around the outside, there's the membrane around this egg kind of acts like the membrane, like a cell membrane or the plasma membrane. And so water and even solutes can move in and out of the egg depending on the concentrations. Now we know, you guys know, okay. When you open an egg, you have the egg yolk and the white, and the yolk's not necessarily going to be, we're not necessarily worried about egg yolk or egg white or whatever. But we know when you open an egg, it's not just all water. Okay, there's some solutes in it. We know that. I know there's carbs and proteins in there and so forth. So there's other things in there besides just water. So we'll see what size, basically what we're going to be doing whenever we put the egg in different substances, we're going to see if the inside of the egg has more solute, hence the ability to pull more water, or if the solution that we're putting the egg into has more solute and hence the ability to pull water. So that's what we're going to be looking for. Let's go ahead and talk about these types of solutions. What this is actually talking about is actually, you know what? We will talk about this on Thursday. No, we better go ahead and talk about it today. Okay, so look at types of solutions. Isotonic solutions. It says if the concentration of solute is equal on both sides, then the water will move back and forth. Scroll down a little bit. Water will move back and forth, but it won't have any result on the overall amount of water on either side. So what that means is isotonic. Iso means same. So what that means is that, like when we're talking about the eggs, we have an isotonic solution. Water can move back and forth into and out of the egg, but it won't necessarily expand or get smaller because it's the same as the solution on the inside. Now, the reason that we're learning this is because all IV fluids, everybody knows, you've seen people get IVs before and they have those big bags of fluid. All IV fluids have a certain amount of solute in them, and that's what tells you on the percentage on there. That's something that it tells you what it's supposed to mean. So trying to decide. I'm trying to plan something in my head and I haven't decided yet. But anyways, so we'll actually look at the effect that this has on cells later this week. It'll be kind of interesting for you, I think. I hope we get to that anyway. But some fluids, IV fluids, are isotonic, meaning they don't really have an effect on the size of our cells in the bloodstream because water can move in and out. Okay, now, hypotonic solutions. Hypo always means low. Po rhymes with low. So anytime you hear that word, think low. Hypo, low. So it says the word hypo means less. In this case, there are less solute molecules outside the cell. And since salt sucks, water will move into the cell. So what that means is hypotonic solutions that we give IV, for example, are solutions that have less salt concentrate than what's on the inside of our cells. They have less salt concentrate than what we have inside our cells. And so since our cells have more solute or salt in them, then our cells actually pull more water into their inside so that it can equal the concentration on the inside can be the same as it is on the outside. Okay? So as a cell will gain water and grow larger, in plant cells, the central vacuoles will fill, or we're not doing plants. In animal cells, the cell may be in danger of bursting. Organelles called contractile vacuoles will pump water out of the cell to try to prevent this. Okay, so hypotonic solutions are going to make the cell get bigger. And you guys will see this with some of your eggs. You'll see it. Okay, hypertonic solutions says the word hyper means excessive or more. Okay, I always think like excessive energy is somebody who's hyper because they're hyperactive, more energy or more active. It says in this case there are more salt molecules outside the cell, which causes the water to be sucked in that direction. So that means if I give that IV, that fluid has more salt in it or sodium in it than does the inside of our cells. And remember, water follows salt. So if there's more salt outside the cell, it's going to pull water from inside the cell to equal out that concentration. Okay, it says in animal cells, the cells will shrink and can die. As this is why it's dangerous to drink seawater. It's a myth that drinking seawater will cause you to go insane. But people marooned at sea will speed up dehydration and death by drinking seawater. And that's because you bring all that salt into your bloodstream, it's going to pull all of the water out of your cells. So your cells are just going to kind of wither away. As this is also why salting fields was a common tactic during war. It would kill the crops in the field, causing food shortages because that salt pulls the water. It says diffusion and osmosis are both types of passive transport, so no energy is required, which we already know. So really interesting. We're going to look at this some more as we go, and whenever you guys get into looking at the eggs, it will make a lot more sense for you. So just keep that in mind too, and we will get that done.